Hi, my name is Jennifer Elsis. I'm part of the John Muir Health Behavioral Health team. We welcome you all to our presentation tonight, Parenting in a Digital World. Tonight's presenters are Daryl Holka, who is Senior Inspector of Internet Crimes Against Children for the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office. Joining him is Allison Shu. She is Director of Clinical Operations and a psychiatric nurse practitioner at John Muir Health Behavioral Health Acute Hospital in Concord, Acute Psychiatric Hospital. So without any other delay, I will let Daryl take it away.
Well, thank you everybody for attending tonight. We know you all have really busy schedules, and this is such an important topic, especially since the COVID disaster came into our lives 14 months ago. Our kids have been spending so much time on smartphones and computers and on the internet. And unfortunately, because of that, we've seen a sharp increase in the number of complaints that have come in to our task force here in Contra Costa County. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to talk to you about some of the issues we're seeing with kids and our young people in an online environment. We want to hear from you about your experiences and your questions. And so I know that you're going to have the opportunity to type those in, and we're going to leave plenty of time to do that here. We'll go to the next slide. A lot of times when we talk to parents, we get questions like, how do I protect my child from online predators, cyberbullying, sexting? When should I allow my child to have a smartphone? What age is appropriate to allow your child to have a smartphone? Social media, Instagram, Twitter. I get that question from parents a lot. What age is it appropriate for my child to have a smartphone? And what I'll tell them is that these are your kids. They're good kids. You know your children best. There are some 8-year-olds you could give a smartphone to and you would never have a problem. And there's some 15-year-olds who should never have a smartphone. And so that's just going to end up being a decision that you have to make. There's a lot of benefits to having these devices, to teaching our kids how to use these devices responsibly. But at the end of the day, that's going to be a discussion that has to occur in your house. And one of the philosophies we like to advocate to parents is that this smartphone discussion should happen before the child even gets the smartphone, about what that means and how that's going to be responsible. I know a lot of parents enter into smartphone contracts with their kids about what the expectations are going to be and what the accountability is going to be should there be a potential problem. We'll go to the next slide. We want to teach our children to protect their name, their identity, and their reputation. We don't want them to be the victims of identity theft. We don't want it to be easy for people to find them online, people who shouldn't be finding them online. And we want to protect their reputation. A lot of times our young people act in the moment and they don't have that foresight as to what they do today online can follow them around for many, many years. And we see that all the time, right? When we have somebody who decides, well, I'm going to go run for Congress, and somebody goes back and they dig up pictures and tweets and text messages from many, many years ago. And so we want to teach our kids that what they do now online can affect them down the road. And I want to talk about one particular example. We'll go to the next slide here. These kids 3-4 years ago did everything that your children are doing. They're getting good grades, they're participating in school, they're volunteering, they're playing sports. And they got into Harvard, which of course is not easy to do. And after they got into Harvard, they were on Facebook Messenger, and they were having what they thought was a closed, private messaging chat amongst themselves. What happened was that they were making very offensive comments. Somebody within that chat screenshotted it. They sent it to Harvard, and Harvard revoked the admissions to these 10 students and told them that they couldn't go there because Harvard said this isn't what we expect from our student body. And so this is just one example of many where we see kids get themselves into situations where they're saying things online and writing things online. And these things, unfortunately, can stay around for a while. And that's called a digital footprint. And we want to teach our kids to, to leave behind that good digital footprint, because their bosses are going to check their social media, their employers, their schools, and you may go through and check their social media. And so we want to make sure that they're leaving that good digital footprint. And that's sort of one of the key words when we go talk to the kids at the schools, is leaving behind that positive, those positive artifacts on the internet. We'll go to the next slide. We want to start with a need and a purpose. Why do they need that smartphone? Unfortunately, these days, with the kids having to do so much distance learning, they have to have ready access to these devices. And so unfortunately, a lot of parents who may have wanted to hold back access have been sort of thrust into this mobile phone dilemma because they need it to attend school. And then social media. Why do they need to have social media? When should they have social media? What's their maturity and ability to follow the rules? There are laws out there that we've put into place. Congress passed the COPA law several years ago. It allows, it says that 13 years old is the youngest age that you should be allowed to have social media. But again, there's no way for the Instagrams of the world to police that. It's all driven by the data that our children tell the company. So if we have a child who tells Instagram that they're 17 years old, when in fact they're only 11, Instagram really doesn't have a way to go through and verify that. And so, we see a lot of kids with access to these social media accounts under the age of 13 because they've told that platform that they're actually older than that. And so although there are laws out there, it really is a conversation that has to happen in the household to make sure that our kids are following those rules. We'll go to the next slide. We want to teach our kids to protect their personal information, to protect their passwords, and learn what's private and what's never private. And what we really want to teach the kids is there's really never any privacy when you're in that online social media environment. But there are some things that kids can do and that parents can do to protect people from the outside being able to talk to our kids. Now, when most of us were growing up, if a stranger wanted to come to our house and come inside of our house, they would knock on the door and mom or dad would answer and, who are you? Why do you want to come in? But these days, when our kids accept a friend request from somebody they don't know, they've essentially invited a stranger into your household. This person is going to have access to vast amounts of information about your child and your family. And so we need to treat that as them inviting people that you don't know into your homes. And so we want to utilize privacy settings on things like Instagram and Snapchat, which are arguably the two more popular ones that our kids are into. And with Instagram, we want to make sure that our kids have private accounts, because if they have a public account, everybody can start looking through their photographs, start looking at the location those photographs may have been taken at. And then can direct message, DM our children and send them these private messages. And that's really where we start to see a majority of the issues where we have adults contacting minors, is through this one-on-one text messaging platform that many of these services offer. So on Instagram, if we look about halfway down the slide on the left-hand side, you'll see that little blue toggle button that says private account. And we always want to make sure that our kids have a private account. And that way, only the people that they've allowed into their sort of Instagram community have access to their personal information. When we go out and we talk to the kids in the schools, we ask them, if they were to go into their Instagram accounts or their Snapchat accounts, would they know every single person in real life? And most of them don't. Most of them invite people into their Instagram and social media communities that they've never met in real life. And that should at the very least be concerning and worthy of a conversation between you and your teenager or you and your youngster about why they're sharing certain information with people that they don't know in real life. So for Instagram, we want to make sure that they have that private account, and we want to make sure that in their biography that they get to write about themselves. They might not want to include things like that they're in high school, their age, because you can search on Instagram. So if my child went to Walnut Creek Intermediate and put Walnut Creek Intermediate into their bio, Mr. Bad Guy could search Instagram and for Walnut Creek Intermediate and potentially find that connection with your child and then begin that one-on-one dialogue. So for Snapchat, also, we want to go through, we want to make sure that only their friends can see their content, their stories. We'll go to the next slide. Snapchat thought it was super important several years ago to create snap maps so that friends could follow one another around via GPS, which is all fine and dandy until we allow a stranger into our Snapchat community, and now our stranger friend can follow us on GPS. And this GPS is incredibly accurate. It's GPS law enforcement would use to help solve crime. It's that accurate. And so we don't want a stranger having GPS access like that to your children. So if you have your child's phone and you're talking to them about Snapchat, we want to make sure that Snapchat is in ghost mode. That means that nobody's allowed to follow them around like they can on that map on the left-hand side. Geotagging is another one. We always want to tell people where we were when photographs were taken. That could create a privacy issue for your family, for your children, if they're taking photographs at school and they're geotagging where they are, what school they go to, where they hang out, where they play sports. So we want to limit the amount of information that people from the outside have to our children. We'll go to the next slide. So online strangers, this is unfortunately where my task force spends probably 90% of its time, is when we have adults who are engaging with children in an online setting. And we want to focus on risky behaviors. And what I'll tell parents is this, is that you should be going through your child's phone. You should be monitoring that those text messages. But our kids spend so much time on these devices. If you really wanted to read all of their text messages, you'd probably have to quit your job, because we have looked at phones where we have hundreds of thousands of messages on one child's phone. So we want to sort of key in on what the red flags may be. And it may not be something as obvious as a photograph that your child has either taken or received. Unfortunately, I deal a lot with these guys who go out and they try to meet kids online, and it's as if they went to a class on how to do this. They all ask the children the same questions. They want to know if their parents are together, where they go after school. They're looking for kids that they're going to eventually be able to have access to. And so when you're looking through the chat messages and the text messages on your kids' phones, we want to look for that TMI, that people asking for too much information. Why does this person need to know where my child goes after school and what sports they play and what extracurricular activities they're involved in, and be questioning our kids, who is this person and do you know them? One of the absolute biggest red flags is when we have an adult telling a child to keep something a secret online. And adults shouldn't be telling the kids to keep things secret in person either, but online we see that frequently, where we'll have the offender telling the kid, make sure you don't tell anybody that you and I are talking. If you see that, that's put the phone into airplane mode and call the police department, because that person is somebody that needs to be investigated. No adult should be telling a kid to keep a secret from their parents. We want to look for online strangers engaging our kids in sexual conversation, sending them to inappropriate sites. A lot of that we call grooming behavior, where we have adults who are kind of trying to test the kid to sort of see how maybe sexually interested they might be. They're trying to normalize potentially sex by sending them to pornography websites. So if we start to see this, we want to make sure that we're taking the appropriate steps to preserve the data and notifying the police department in your jurisdiction, or you can call us directly here at the DA's office. Most parents, this would be so shocking to them. Their first reaction would be, I want to delete this off of the phone and throw the phone off of the Benicia Bridge. Well, you can certainly do that, and that would be fine, except at that point, our ability to be able to go through and investigate that person probably goes away. Also, because a lot of these platforms don't keep that information on their servers. So the only place we can go to that for that information is going to be the kid's phone. So if you start to see your kid engaged in that type of behavior, and you think it rises to the level of needing to call the police department, put the phone into airplane mode, and turn that over to law enforcement so that we can take the appropriate steps to investigate that person. We will go to the next slide here. So cyberbullying is a big one. We spend a lot of time talking to the kids about cyberbullying. And I know Allison's going to talk about this topic quite a bit here. This is really scary for parents. The good thing is what I've seen is when I've gone to the schools and I've talked to the middle schoolers about cyberbullying, they have a very comprehensive understanding as to what cyberbullying is, how they should respond to it, what they can do to stick up for their friends, how they can report it. And so we try to teach them not to be just a bystander, somebody who just sits on the sidelines, to be active in protecting themselves and protecting their friends. You see a lot of the cyberbullying occurring when kids are expressing themselves artistically. You'll see it on Pinterest. You'll see it on Instagram. TikTok is a big one. I get a lot of questions about TikTok from parents. Is this a good site for my kid to be on? Should my kid have a TikTok account? But anytime we have our children sort of out there expressing themselves, there's going to be that potential element for cyberbullying. And so it's important to talk to our kids ahead of time to recognize cyberbullying and to know what to do with it if they see it. We see, unfortunately, a lot of police reports coming in the county for criminal behavior involving cyberbullying. And so this is a big topic that we want to make sure that our kids are aware of, and they know that they can come to you if they see it and they feel comfortable doing that. We'll go to the next slide here. Some of the things we like to teach the kids is, would I say this to their face, right? It's really easy to, when you're behind a keyboard, to make fun of somebody or talk about somebody. How would it feel if someone said that about me? Would I want my parents to read it? Would I want my teachers to read it? Would I want the admissions office at Harvard to read it? And understanding that this cyberbullying activity has long-lasting consequences. I know I've talked to a lot of principals in the county, and even though this conduct may occur away from school, if it affects school the next day, the next week, I know most of the administrators in the county will see that as a school issue and will have something to say about it. So this is a good conversation. It's a good topic to be talking to our kids about. I've had a lot of parents say some of the effective ways that they've talked to their children about cyberbullying is sharing news articles when things like this come out, and using that as sort of a launch pad to talk to their children about sort of the dangers and the pitfalls of engaging in that type of behavior. We'll go to the next slide. So sexting, this is it's almost become integrated into the teenage dating process. I tell parents it's really not going to be if they're confronted with this issue, it's going to be when. We tell the kids and we ask them, was this my idea? Where will this end up? We ask the kids, where do you think this will end up? And luckily, most of them say probably everywhere. What I want this forwarded. And this is a big issue. And we've seen a lot of this since COVID came up, is this sort of sharing of explicit photographs amongst large groups of people, large groups of kids. So we want to ask our kids, would you want that forwarded and can you get it back? And of course, it's the internet. Once you hit the send button, you give up total control over that private information. And no, you can never get it back. So the platforms can sometimes shut accounts down, law enforcement can get involved. But at the end of the day, once that photograph is shared, the chances that it's going to be shared beyond that is very high. So we want to make sure we're teaching our kids not to pressure people for these photographs. We're all really, really good at telling our kids, don't do drugs, don't drink, don't go with strangers, but we have to talk to our kids about not taking explicit photographs of themselves and sharing them. Like I said, these kids live in the moment. So the 15-year-old thinks this is going to be my boyfriend or girlfriend forever. And teenage relationships, as they are, end frequently very quickly. And the jilted party will then use those photographs to bully the other person. And so the time to decide is before being pressured. Have a plan as to how they're going to deal with it ahead of time. And if this starts to go wrong, then you can reach out to the schools, you can reach out to the police department, and we can try to get involved. We'll go to the next slide. I thought this was kind of a funny one. Kids are going to get hit up for unsolicited, sexually explicit photos all the time. It's not if, but when. A computer programmer for the Ontario Provincial Police Department in Canada created this website called Send This Instead and reached out to some celebrities to write in postcards. What would you do, or what would you say if you were prompted for an unsolicited, sexually explicit image? And this was my favorite one. I can't send you nude photos, but I'll forward this to my dad and you can try asking him for some. We want to teach our kids kind of some of that creative ways to relieve some of that peer pressure, but there's also no reason why their response can't be more direct than that. But this was just kind of a funny slide that I thought at least sort of starts the conversation and makes it somewhat humorous. We'll go to the next slide. Monitoring software. The article from the Washington Post on the left says it all. These kids are the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. Nature finds a way. You could put all the monitoring software you want on these devices, and these kids are so smart, they're going to figure it out. So we talk about apps like Hour Pact and Life 360 and Bark. These are all good apps to have, especially with our younger kids. It can monitor what sites they're going to. You can read their messages. But understanding what apps your children are using is probably one of the most important things. And so what we tell parents is, you may not want to use Instagram, but I would download it on your phone anyways, so that you have that sense as to how the app works, what it takes to set up the account, where the messages are, where the search feature is, so that if you're deciding to go through your child's phone, you have that understanding as to how that app works. I do the same thing with Snapchat. If your kid is on Discord, I would go on Discord and create an account and just understand just how the process works, and just be good users of those apps yourselves, so that you can have those conversations with your kids and understand how this technology works. Learn what can be private and what is never private on social media. There's really never anything that's private on social media because of the screenshotting that takes place, the video recording now. It's so easy to take a private conversation and screenshot it. The message to the kids is nothing is private, and to treat that as such. Talk early and talk often. The conversation about smartphone use needs to be one that happens all the time. It may start off with them getting a smartphone and no apps. When they want Instagram, we're going to have another conversation about Instagram. When they want TikTok, we need to have another conversation about what that means, and teaching them that technology at their age is a privilege and a responsibility. It's not a right. I have had arguments with parents about the Fourth Amendment and whether or not they're allowed to search their children's phones and their children's social media accounts. Yes, you can. That is your device. You should have the passcode to it. You should have access to it. You should be allowed to look at it when you want. And it's a privilege for them to be able to have that when they're in your house. So don't feel bad about taking their phone and searching it. They should have privacy to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, you have the right to go through and look at that. We'll go to the next slide here. This is a couple of years old, but I think it still holds true. It was a study that was done where they surveyed teens and parents about smartphone use. I think the top one's pretty good. The number of parents who say they've talked to their kids about rules and expectations, and another number of teens that say their parents have done this. This is a conversation that just needs to be happening before they get the phone and needs to be continuing throughout the time that they live in your house. And there needs to be a certain amount of trust between the parents and the kids. All kids are going to make mistakes online. We want to make sure that while we're correcting those mistakes, we're still reserving that trust so that when something really bad happens, they feel comfortable coming to you and telling you about it. Because when you start to see things like your kids not even wanting a phone anymore, we probably have a problem there. And I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and she's going to talk about some of the mental health issues that happen with our teenagers and smartphones.
All right, thank you, Daryl. So as Daryl mentioned, there's been a significant increase in issues coming up with things that kids are doing online, especially during the pandemic. There's a lot more need for kids to be online and a lot more opportunities for them to get into troubling situations. So what are some warning signs? What are some things that you can look for if you're not sure that there's something going on, but you're noticing a significant change in your child? I mean, that's what we're really looking for, is a significant change. Some of the things you might see, more outward signs, is crying, crying for no reason, right? No reason that you're aware of, right? So something is going on that's upsetting them. Isolating. So we all know teenagers like to spend time in their room, and that's normal. That's normal behavior. But if they're really wanting to be alone all the time, or wanting to kind of be on their phone and kind of shut everybody else out, that is the time to be concerned and to be more looking more closely at, what they might be doing on their phone or what might be going on. A lack of emotion. So, if you normally have a child who's expressive and, they're more flat, one-word answers, don't seem to want to communicate, that might be a sign, that there's something going on, that they're, not wanting to talk. Again, some of that can be normal, but, when it does become more significant. Irritability. So, obviously teenagers are going through a lot of changes. And some irritability is normal, but irritability can also be a sign of some, pretty significant mental health issues going on, like anxiety, depression. In teens, irritability is kind of the staple of depression. That's the main sign that you're going to see a lot of initially. So that is something, if it comes on suddenly, you would want to be mindful of. Changes in sleep and appetite. So it could go up or down, right? A lack of being able to sleep. That could, be a sign that there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, or sleeping a lot, or, you can see up and down in the sleep patterns with depression. Changes in appetite, same thing, either not interested, or not, wanting to eat, or, eating a lot more than usual. Again, can also be some of those symbolic of those depressive symptoms. Loss of interest or pleasure in things they used to enjoy. So whether it be activities, social, sports, a variety of things, if they're not as interested, that could be a sign that something is either going on. So maybe there is some bullying going on, or just that they are starting to have some of those symptoms, related to depression or anxiety. A recent change in friend group. So something to watch for with that. We do see a lot of teens coming in where either they have a loss of friends, right? So you used to see, certain friends, you knew them, that was a kind of their regular group, and they've sort of disappeared, or a completely different group. And, that can be indicative of, either maybe they're getting into things that they shouldn't be, or that, they've been, experiencing some online, bullying or things from their usual friend group. And then also significant change in dress. So, we will see patients who have had, if they're engaging in inappropriate relationships online, they might start dressing more provocatively, in response to that. Or if you're seeing, long sleeves and pants in warm weather, that could be a sign that they're engaging in some unsafe behaviors, which we'll talk about in the next slide. So mental health concerns, right? So, when our kids are having trouble online, whether it be, again, those inappropriate relationships where, maybe somebody is in a predatory relationship and sort of seeking them out online, or again, they could be being bullied by peers, or just not treated well in their online friend group. We might see some guilt and some shame, right? So associated with either the behaviors they're engaging in, or that they're embarrassed because this is happening to them, and it is essentially a public forum. It's just like happening in the quad at school, right? Because everybody sees it. Self-esteem issues. So an increased focus on their appearance, or maybe pointing out things they don't like about themselves. So negative self-image. This can also be in kind of a hyper focus on selfies and using filters and trying to change things about their appearance. And again, selfies is a pretty normal thing for teenagers, but when it gets to kind of a hyper focus, that can sometimes be a reason to dig further. Hopelessness, helplessness, feeling like, maybe there's no other way out, or everybody's against them, that type of thing. As I mentioned, an increase in anxiety. Anxiety can take physical manifestations. So you can see stomach aches, headaches, all kinds of physical things that they didn't have before. If they start mentioning a lot of those things, or using those as reasons to get out of certain things, that can definitely be, a sign that they have pretty significant anxiety. Increase in depression. And again, in teens, this typically looks like irritability. So the irritability gets a lot more intense. Non-suicidal self-injury. So that's what I was mentioning about, wearing long pants or long sleeves, maybe, as it's getting warmer. This is also known as self-harm. So this is, when patients are struggling, we will see that they have turned to this self-injury as a way to cope. Sometimes they say the physical pain takes away the emotional pain. So that's definitely something to look out for. That can go down a road where things can become very, very dangerous. And so any sign of that would be cause for concern. Substance abuse. This could be, drinking alcohol, marijuana. There's all different kinds of drugs of abuse that we're seeing. And so you would see that, your child seems to be disoriented or seems to be secretive, or again, maybe hanging out with a different friend group, that type of thing. And then of course, what we see typically coming into the hospital is suicidal ideations or gestures. So things have gotten to a point where they actually feel so desperate that they, have thoughts to kill themselves, or possibly even engage in behaviors to try to carry that out. Next slide, please. So what can parents do if you're noticing these things? So cannot emphasize enough communicating. That's the biggest thing. And I know, as Daryl pointed out, a lot of times we think we're communicating with our children and maybe they're not interpreting it that way. So voice your concerns, right? You notice a change in behavior, it's okay to say that. I would do it in a non-judgmental, non-threatening, non-accusatory way, right? Use open-ended statements or ask questions. So, just point out things that you've noticed, but don't give them a chance to give a one-word answer and kind of get out of the conversation. So you've been spending so much time in your room, we miss you. Just an observation and see what that leads to. Or just, pointing out things that you've noticed, right? They're sleeping a lot more, or they, aren't interested in dinner at night. Point that out to them and see if you can get a conversation started. Next slide, please. All right, so and then keep the conversation going, right? So daily. I know, sometimes it's tempting to say, how, did you have a good day, or how was your day? And the answer you'll get is good, fine, whatever type of thing. Ask open-ended questions. So what did you do today? If you notice anything, it seems off, did anything upsetting happen? Who did you see? Or, right now, a lot of times they're not seeing their friends. So, who are you missing seeing? Which of your friends are you missing? And be comfortable with silence. You might, I think a lot of times when parents are having conversations with children, they kind of get nervous and they feel like they got to keep going, but give them an opening, give them a chance to kind of jump in there, just kind of sit with them. And the other thing is just meet them where they're at. So maybe they like to play video games. I'm sure most of them do, right? So sit next to them. Can I play with you? And then talk as you play. Engage with them in something they enjoy so that it's not so threatening to have the conversation, so that you can start to ask some of those questions and dig down a little bit to see, what might be going on, and make sure that, there's not unsafe things happening online. All right.
All right. So some resources. So just to sort of piggyback on what Allison said, it's a strange time for our kids, because when most of us were growing up, our parents knew our friends' parents, and there was that communication. And we have to accept the fact nowadays that our teenagers are going to be friends with kids that you may never get the opportunity to meet. And they're going to trust these people that they meet online. Somebody may say something nice about an Instagram post or compliment something on TikTok. And our kids are going to begin to trust these other people that they themselves have never actually met in real life. So it's a strange time to be parenting a kid in this digital world. There's some resources out there. My favorite is Common Sense Media. I have a 7-year-old. Anytime she wants to watch a new movie, I go to Common Sense Media. I look at the reviews. But Common Sense Media also goes through and it rates smartphone apps. So if your child says, I want Discord, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know what Discord is, you can go to Common Sense Media and check out what they say about Discord. They've reviewed it. They will tell you what other parents say about it, what kids say about it. They'll tell you how to set up certain privacy and security settings. So Common Sense Media is sort of my one-stop shop if you're looking for a one website to bookmark and use that for your technology needs for your kids. That's a good one. We'll go to the next slide here. I think that's, oh, yeah, there's our contact information. I also put my email out in the chat feature. If you have any questions, please type in your questions into the chat function down at the bottom. But feel free to reach out to us. We'll come out to to other organizations. Our team here at the district attorney's office, we probably talked to about 12,000 kids, several thousand parents, probably about 2 or 3 dozen organizations. If the softball team or the Girl Scout troop or you know, you want your school to host one of these events, please let us know and we will come out and we will talk to parents. We'll talk to the kids. We usually like to talk to the parents first, so they can begin those conversations at home, and then we'll follow up with an in-person presentation to the middle schoolers, which is where, at least for my team, the conversation is driven, and we're more than happy to come out and do that.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll stay live here for a little while to give you a chance to ask any questions in the chat box that you might have. We'll hang around and for another 10 minutes or so, or it looks like we've got about 14. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. If not, we appreciate your time. We thank you for joining us. And in the spirit of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, please let us know however you can if we can be of service to you in any way and support your mental health or your teen or child's mental health as well.
All right, so, there's a oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go. You can see it, so that's great. I'll take my mute here.
So it looks like, is there a certain software you recommend for surveillance of sites the kids go to? Yeah, there's several good ones out there. Bark is fantastic. OurPact, I'll type that one into the chat feature, is another one. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from parents. But I will tell you, in my experience, the best monitoring software are you folks, because you know your children better than anybody, and you're going to be able to see those changes in behavior that Allison talked about, and the hair on the back of your neck is going to stand up and you're going to go, you know, something's just not right here. And so you are the best monitors. But yes, there are some technology resources out there that you can put onto your phone. I would go to Common Sense Media. I would research those, see what's best for you, what's best for your family. But I wouldn't let technology replace your parenting sixth sense, which you all have, because that's usually going to be right. You're welcome, Jolene.
We'll give it another couple minutes, give everybody a chance to think about if they have any questions. If not, we'll drop off here in another couple of minutes. And again, thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay, any concerns, risks you've been seeing with online gaming? Online gaming is a tough one. Yeah, you know, our kids like to play video games, and a lot of these video games operate on a team concept. And so if you need 4 people to play Call of Duty and you only have 3, they'll assign somebody to play with you, and that somebody could be anywhere in the world. And so what we really want to do is we want to make sure that some of those video games, they're occurring out in a public area of the house, maybe, where you can keep an eye on it. And where we really see the issues is where we're going off of the gaming platform into a one-on-one texting environment. So if we have an adult or another kid, somebody we don't know, who's trying to get your child off of the video game platform into one-on-one texting, that right there is where the cause for concern can be. But I would research those video games online, make sure that the safety and security settings are where you want them to be, have that open dialogue with your kids about what some of the dangers are out there. Is there a way to get access to a kid's phone if they won't share the password? Well, yeah, the easiest way is to take the phone away from them. They shouldn't password you out of a device that you should have access to. we have law enforcement software that has some success in terms of getting data out of phones when we don't have the passcode. But that's just not going to be okay. That would be a huge red flag, and I think that's going to probably fall into one of those categories Allison talked about, one of those changes in behavior that need to be addressed. And it can be something like, why are you doing this? These open-ended questions. Kids want to be private. They want to feel like their privacy is being respected. But I think that when that smartphone is given to them initially, that's part of the deal, is that you're going to have the passwords. I don't know, Allison, do you have anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I would say I agree with Daryl. I would say that's a red flag. I mean, I know people at this age, they are, establishing independence. They want to be on their own, but that would be a bit of a red flag for me, that something's going on that they don't want you to know about. And if it's accompanied by any of those other things that we talked about earlier, I think it would definitely be time to have that conversation. So, like Daryl said, when you give me the passcode, I'll give you your phone back type of thing, because unfortunately, that's not a good sign if they don't want you to see it.
How can companies be held accountable for allowing predatory adults to have access to children? That's a great question, and that's a very topical debate. In fact, the Supreme Court has been talking about that recently. If it's a company that's in the United States, they have to follow laws. There is a federal law that requires them to report child exploitation to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The big companies like the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Googles of the world do a fantastic job with that. We get cyber tips from them all the time. Unfortunately, a lot of times some of these apps and some of these companies aren't located in the United States. And so I can't send a subpoena or a search warrant to a company that's not located in the United States. So there are consequences for companies that allow predatory adults to have access to kids. There are civil lawsuits that are going on. And I know that there's a portion of our population that wants to amend Section 230 to make these companies liable for content on their platform. And so that'll be an interesting debate as we sort of move forward as a society, is what type of liability these companies have. Allison, what age group are you seeing mainly kids coming into psych emergency services there?
Well, it's getting younger and younger. So we have an adolescent unit, that's ages 13 to 17, and this is a big issue with that age group, but we're seeing it younger on our child unit. So we're seeing kids 9, 10, 11 on our child unit where, they're needing services, and a lot of times it is related to things that are going on online. But yeah, the youngest we see is 5, so they don't usually have phones, but the population's getting younger and younger, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a lot in line with what we're seeing in terms of complaints coming in. We're seeing victims 9, 10 years old on Instagram and Snapchat. So.
Yeah.
For everyone who joined us this evening for this webinar, I will be sending out a follow-up email that includes my contact and also resources for you if you have a need for mental health services for your teens or any adults in your lives that in regards to not just cyber safety, but other issues and areas in life as well.
All right, Angelina asked, are social platforms working on preventing bad influencers from reaching out to teens? They are. Instagram is trying to come up with this concept of Instagram for kids. Facebook Messenger, I think, is rolled out. Facebook Messenger for kids. Yeah, it's tough because there's no way to really age verify in many cases. And so we have a lot of cases where we have adults pretending to be kids to try to get explicit content. But it's an evolving process with them. They can do better. They need to do better. And again, kind of like that previous question about how companies can be held accountable. yeah, it's going to be an interesting debate as we move forward. You can report bad behavior to the platform. If you see a sex offender on Facebook or Instagram, they're not allowed to be there. You can report that to those platforms. They'll take them off. So they have ways to police that, but they're definitely not at the level they need to be.
We have just a few minutes, so if you have any final questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Okay, it looks like we are out of questions. We're certainly not out of time, but in the interest of everybody getting back to their evening, we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Allison, for your subject matter and question and answer session. And we thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a good night.